Hey friends, thanks for joining us on this Monday. My name is Michael. I'm one of the co-pastors here at Central, and y'all, we're in for a treat tonight. I have the Dr. Roy Heller, though I think I just call you Roy now, right? We just
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
who was my Old Testament professor in seminary, and Roy, don't tell Dr. Clark Souls this, but my favorite professor at Perkins. So we'll keep it on the DL. I'm gonna have to edit this out later, but in class, the Old Testament is tough, and growing up it was tough, and Roy just opened up this entire more than half of our scriptures in ways that continue to impact me today and my preaching, and and sneaking out and getting Bloody Marys between class was also
It helps, I
a
tell
big
you.
plus. Yeah, it definitely
Exactly.
made it,
Especially with reading the Old Testament. Bloody Marys are really.
I think we
really
were more
help.
tolerable for you after that, and then vice versa, right? So,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Roy, I've kind of been asking everybody to start with. It's the most loaded question of 2020, but like, how are you? How are things right now as a professor, as dad, husband, living in Dallas? How are things?
It's good, I'll tell you. It's good. Obviously, right, there's tons of bad stuff going on around. I don't even know if you know, but my wife was diagnosed with cancer
Oh, I'm so sorry.
at the end of August, and so we're dealing with that. We have both kids living in our tiny little apartment. But I tell you, you know what? It's really funny. But things are good, actually. I mean, my God, and again, I'm not trying to be maudlin, and I'm not trying to be whatever emotional or something, but there's so much to be thankful for. I mean, we just left Thanksgiving, right? And there really is, when you actually take a look around it. It's kind of like I say in my Job lecture, if you remember. It's like you have a choice, and you have a choice of living in a world of justice, or you have a choice of living in a world of grace, and you can't live in both. You either see everything as fair or not fair, or you see everything as a pure gift. And I just think seeing things as a gift is kind of the way to go.
That's amazing.
Sure does make it a lot happier. So
Absolutely, yeah. I think that, especially right now, making that decision, I think is it's really important. We did 4 weeks on Job a couple weeks ago because it's
really? Oh, awesome!
Most 2020 books. So
it really is.
Yeah, it was
along with Joshua.
Yeah. So let's just jump into Joshua.
Okay.
So I was looking back through my notes of your class.
Yeah.
And the first thing I have for the Joshua lecture, it's in all caps at the top of my notes, and it says, Heller hates Joshua. Okay, this is at the top of my page.
Yeah.
When you and I were talking before, things maybe have shifted a little bit. So
yeah, about 2 years ago or so. Yeah. Again, for 20-something years, Joshua has been one of my least favorite books of the Bible, and it's really clear why, right? I mean, there's incredible amounts of bloodshed. There's incredible, and it's not even wars, right? It's just genocide. I mean, people just go in. Again, there's particularly in like chapter 6. It's not that the Jerichoites like try to fight back. It's like they just go in and they slaughter everybody. And so, and also for 2,500 years, the book has been used to justify that type of action throughout the world. And so there's a lot to not like about the book of Joshua. And for 20 something years, I actually despised it. Again, I read it, I lectured on it. Every year I came around and I did my spiel on Joshua, but I did not like it. And then I don't know what it was about 2 years ago, I started seeing a few things in the book that, again, I'm not going to say that Jericho never happens, and I'm not going to say that the people don't slaughter people in Jericho, but I think that there are some ways of reading the book that are actually redemptive, and are actually helpful, when you start paying attention to some of the details. I'll put it that way. So, want to talk about those?
I would love that. Like so the way you described it for us, at least in class, was like, you've got like the Jerichoites, for example, and they're evil. And the reason that they're evil is because they're Jerichoites, right?
Right.
And I think, yeah, just about 2020, but certainly the last 100 years of American history and how these same arguments have sort of played out in people's lives. And so,
Right.
yeah, I'd love to hear more about sort of what you uncovered in some of these details.
Yeah, sure. So starting at the very beginning, right? And again, I've just sort of got my book right here. First of all, you'll just notice, huh?
You read the Bible?
Yeah, a little bit. I just have a lot of extra Roy notes in it, so right. I like to read the Roy notes instead of what's in the text. But anyway, you'll just notice, first of all, something that really struck me is that the name of the book. Right? If you remember, right, one of Heller's rules of reading, these little tricks I have about how to break texts open, is you always look at the very first thing, right? And the very first thing in this book is that it's the book of Joshua. It's not the book of genocide. It's not the book of slaughter. It's not even the book of bloodshed. It's the book of Joshua. And so you need to pay attention to Joshua. Keep your eye on Joshua. There's something about Joshua that you need to know, right, from the very beginning. So keep your right. It's kind of like the little shell game where you put Joshua underneath one of the little shells, and we keep going back and forth, and we stop, and it's like, where's Joshua? Is he under this shell or this shell or this shell? So you need to keep your eye on Joshua. Okay. Cool. In the first chapter, we have this extended speech by God, and one of the things that God tells Joshua over and over and over is, don't be afraid. You need to be courageous. Don't be afraid. You need to be courageous. And then the third time, don't be afraid. You need to be very courageous. And so the question might pop up, why might Joshua be afraid, right? Well, here's a reason why Joshua might be afraid. He's going to be going into a country with a lot of foreign people in it, which is kind of ironic because, in fact, they're the ones coming into the country.
Correct. They're the foreigners, right?
They're the foreigners, right?
Exactly.
But there's a lot of people there. And I can imagine that in that type of situation, one of the things that Joshua might be afraid of is the way in which they are going to be perceiving us. And they may have bad feelings toward us. And they may want to do violence toward us. And so God says, you need to be brave. You need to be courageous. And it seems to me, sort of spoiler alert, it seems to me going forward that there's two ways in which Joshua you could hear that instruction to be courageous. And one of them is, you need to be courageous and go wipe them out. Another way of hearing it, though, is another way, and that is, you need to be courageous because your priorities are all screwed up. That, in fact, it very well may be that you don't need to be afraid because, in fact, they aren't out to get you. They aren't out to do violence against you. They aren't the enemy. Okay? So you need to be brave when you go into this land and get rid of all those presuppositions. At the very end of that chapter, if you're going to keep your eye on Joshua, right, you also need to keep your eye on Israel, because at the very end of that chapter, Israel says something really important to Joshua. And I'm just looking here. They answer Joshua, everything that you've commanded us we'll do, and wherever you send us, we'll go. Just as we obeyed Moses in everything, that's how we're going to obey you. Only may the Lord your God be with you as he was with Moses. And then they say something really scary. You ready? Here we go. Whoever rebels against your orders and disobeys your words, whatever you command, shall be put to death. You need to be strong, and you need to be courageous. That's kind of scary, right? I mean, if I said, Michael, whatever you tell me, I'll do. And in fact, if anybody at Central disobeys your words, if you tell them to do something and they don't do it, they should die. What sudden, it's funny because they use the language of God. May the Lord your God be with you. But in fact, the real standard of their actions, the real standard of what they think needs to be done is in fact not God.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's not Moses. And in fact, it's not the law. And in fact, it's not even God. The real standard of what they need to do is Joshua. And so not only do you need to keep your eye on Joshua, Israel is already keeping their eye on Joshua. And unfortunately, it seems as though the way in which Joshua sees things and the way in which Israel sees things is absolutely the same. And it's not a good way of seeing things. And God tries to intervene. And, well, we'll see how it goes. All right? Yeah. So there's chapter 1. Chapter 2, which is what we are really here to talk about, right? We have the whole story of Rahab. So right. I'll turn the tables now. Why did you want to talk about Rahab?
Yeah, so Julia, one of my co-pastors, and I were trying to plan on our Advent sermon series. And so we were going through sort of Matthew's genealogy of Jesus, right? And these women pop up in the genealogy, which is highly unusual. And then when you go dig about their backstories, it's even more unusual, right? When I think of the people that I would put in my genealogy, like women who sleep with their father-in-laws, or like prostitutes, or certainly not Moabite women, right? Or Bathsheba, and yeah. So looking, and then all of this was kind of under the theme of the late John Lewis, who had that great quote that talked about good trouble, necessary trouble, right? We've been thinking about Jesus as sort of this holy troublemaker, and these other co-troublemakers that have come along and sort of prepared the way during this Advent season. And so, yeah, last week we talked about Tamar and all kinds of wild, exciting things, because what a story, right?
It's true.
And so Rahab is the next woman up. And I think there's a lot that she has to teach us for 2020 about sort of sitting in the middle of places. And yeah, so that's kind of where that popped up from.
Great. Yeah, I mean, right? I mean, so Joshua, he sends spies, a couple of spies. And you'll just notice that he, again, for me at least, a really important word there. And again, a word that most people would just slip by. He sends spies secretly. He sends spies secretly to Jericho, right? So search out the land, especially Jericho, right? And so they come to Jericho, and just like all good spies, and that is, if you're going to spy out a place, you want to go to a place where people are coming in and out all night long, where you sort of turned a blind eye to certain things that are going on over there here in Dallas, it's Harry Hines. I don't know where it is there in Houston or in Galveston, but you sort of turned a blind eye to certain things that are happening over there. And so it's a perfect place to go, right? The house of a prostitute, because nobody's really paying attention to who's coming and going at all hours of the night.
It's actually central here in Galveston.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
See, that's where the spies would go, is central.
They come to central. That's exactly right. So,
and it's funny. And again, this was originally written in Hebrew, right? And if you read this in Hebrew, the first part of this story is absolutely hilarious. There's all sorts of sexual innuendos that go on in this. And I'm reading, right? Chapter 2,
Bible,
verse
y'all.
2. This is the Bible. This is Bible, right?
Yes.
So this is God's holy word. The king of Jericho was told some Israelites had come here tonight to search out the land. And then the king of Jericho sent orders to Rahab, bring out the men who have come into you. It says come to you, but in Hebrew, it's the normal way. And there may be children watching.
Can you explain that further?
I can draw a picture.
Yeah, let's get some visuals here.
Yeah. Exactly. I can give you some websites. So bring out the men who have come to you, who entered your house, right? Who entered your house, because they have come only to search out the whole land. But the woman took the 2 men and she hid them. And then she told the messenger from the king, oh, yeah. There were some men who came into me, but I didn't know, biblical know.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
I didn't know where they came from, right? However, I know that they left at dark and they went out, and if you pursue them quickly, you can overtake them. But instead, she had taken them in and she had hidden them on her roof among some flax, right?
Which you said was like
A fertility, it's a fertility
right?
symbol, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like when you're walking down the street and you see a pole with red, white, and blue stripes sort of going down it. You know, it's a barber shop, right? You go down and you see, oh, I don't know, a symbol with a green mermaid, right? Green thing with a white mermaid on it. You know, it's Starbucks, right? You walk down a street and you see some flax hanging from the roof. You know
Rahab's
what?
house. Yeah.
Exactly, it's Rahab's house, right? So you know what goes on in there, right? So she hides them among the flax, and then suddenly, that quick in the story, it stops being so funny and it starts being like really beautifully serious. As soon as and she talks to the men before they had gone to sleep, before they had laid down. She came up to them. And she said to them, I know that the Lord has given you the land, and that the dread of you has fallen on us, and all the inhabitants of the land melt in fear before you, because we've heard how the Lord dried up the waters of the Red Sea. And she just starts talking, and it's really beautiful. When she starts talking, she sounds an awful lot like Moses did in the previous book in Deuteronomy. She sort of rehearses the whole history of the wonderful things that God has done for Israel since bringing them out of slavery, bringing them through the sea, bringing them through the wilderness, giving them the law. The whole history, she knows this, and she's able to recite it. She keeps talking about Yahweh. She keeps talking about God in terms of your God. But in fact, it's very clear that in fact, it's not just their God. She actually recognizes, in fact, she says herself, that in fact, Yahweh, God, is the God of heaven and earth. She knows who this is. And so she asks them to make a promise, make a covenant with her, that whenever they come, that they won't kill her or her parents or her brothers and sisters or anyone that belongs to her house, which is interesting.
Yeah,
right?
it's so scandalous,
Because
right?
it sounds as though she seems to assume very similar types of things to the way that Joshua might assume things in the first chapter. And that is that when these Israelites come in, their attitude toward us is going to be one toward violence, that their attitude toward us is going to be murder or slaughter. And Joshua, you remember, his idea is that we're going into a bunch of people, we're going into a land where they're going to want to do this toward us, right? So because again, you know as well as I do that this is the way the world works. I don't know if it's the way that God works, but it's the way the world works, right? And so she wants some sort of a promise from them that they're not gonna, they'll save her, they'll rescue her. And they give her that promise. And in fact, they give her a little sign by which they can know which house is hers from looking from the outside of the city, because in fact, she lives in the wall. She lives in the wall, right?
Could you talk a little bit about maybe the, is it castmate? Is that the right?
Casemate. Yeah, casemate walls. And that is that walls in the ancient world are probably around cities, not walls of town or not walls of houses, right? But walls around cities are incredibly huge things, very wide, maybe 20 feet wide, maybe 30 feet wide. And what would happen is that whenever a city was being besieged, when an army was coming against a city, what you would do is that you would take a bunch of rocks and you would fill in all those rooms that make up the wall. And suddenly it's not a wall that's like 6 feet plus 30 feet. Suddenly now you have a wall that's like 30 feet or 20 feet wide, right? Which is really hard to knock down. And so, but she actually lives in the wall. She's kind of an insider, but she's not really an insider. So she's kind of an outsider, but she's not really an outsider. You see, she's a Canaanite, right? She's a Jerichoite, but yet her knowledge of Yahweh seems to be much better than her knowledge of Baal or any of the gods of Canaan. But yet she's not an Israelite, right? She doesn't have the covenant, right, with God that the Israelites do. And so where does she fall? Well, I can tell you where she falls. She falls into place besides us and them. That's where she falls, right? She falls right in the middle. And that makes us really uncomfortable, right? Because we need things to be either this or that. We need to be us or them. We need to be A or C, certainly not B. So we need those poles. We certainly can't deal with anything in the middle.
But this fits really well, right, with what just happened in chapter 5, right, where we're talking about where this general of the army of the Lord shows up and says, whose side are you on?
That's right, exactly, right? So, yet again, the funny thing is that the switch that came in my head about 2 years ago was that the story of Jericho, if you held a gun to my head and you says, where's the story of Jericho, right? I would have responded, because I know the Bible, I would have responded, right, Joshua 6, right? It starts in Joshua 6. Right? Now Jericho was shut up inside and out, right? Joshua 6, that's where it starts. But in fact, that's not the first mention of Jericho. Obviously, it's mentioned there in chapter 2, but the first mention of Jericho in the center part of the book actually occurs at the end of chapter 5. Because once, when Joshua was by Jericho, so he's at Jericho, he looked up and he saw a man standing before him with a drawn sword in his hand. Oh my gosh. Yikes, right? So if I see somebody with an Uzi, right, or I see somebody with an assault rifle, I want to know whether you're, on my side or right. So
that's important information.
It's important to know, right?
Yeah.
So Joshua went up to him and he says, "Are you one of us? Or are you one of our adversaries?" You see, there it is again from chapter 1. Joshua sees things in certain ways, and that is that it is either A or B. You're either insider or outsider. You're either us or them. You're either or. The world for Joshua is divided into 2 groups. And the captain or this guy replies, and again, in the English it says neither, but in fact, what it says in Hebrew is no. Are you one of us or are you one of our adversaries? And the guy says, no. You see, in a sense, it's not saying neither one. What he's saying is that that's not even the right way to think about stuff.
The question doesn't make sense.
The question doesn't even make sense, right? Because in fact, the way in which this guy is going to see things, and we'll find out very quickly who this guy is, because it's not just any guy. The way in which this guy sees things is not so simplistic, right? He says neither. But as commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come. And Joshua falls on his face to the earth and he worships. So this guy represents God. This guy represents the way in which God sees situations, right? Joshua falls on his face to the earth and he worships, and he said to him, "What do you command your servant, my Lord?" And the commander of the army of the Lord said, "What you need to do is you need to take the people, and you need to take the army, you need to march around the city 7 times, and blah, 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 and then the walls are going to fall down, and then you kill everybody." No, that's not what he says. "What do you command me? What do you command your servant, my Lord?" And the commander of the army of the Lord said to Joshua, "Remove the sandals from your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy." Here's the question. Where is he standing? At Jericho. The place where you're standing is holy. This is a holy place. You think that this is a foreign place. You think that this is a place outside. You think that this is a place of enemies. You think that this is a place of, no. This is a place where I am. I'm already there. You need to wise up and realize that in fact the world is not made out of us and them. In fact, I am everywhere. Rahab has already let us know that in chapter 2. I am in fact everywhere. And in fact, if I am anywhere at all, it's not in the tabernacle. It's not in the temple. It's not with the Ark of the Covenant. If I am anywhere at all, it's in Jericho. You see, Joshua, it's almost as if Joshua's whole world has a wall in it, right? A wall that divides us and them. A wall that divides A and B. It seems as though in Joshua's world, there's this wall that divides people. And what the captain of the army of the Lord says is that, you know what? No, there shouldn't be a wall. No walls. In fact, there is no us and them. There is no friends and enemies. There is just us. All right? Got it?
Yeah. So
Here we
good.
go. Here we go. Jericho was shut up inside and outside because of the Israelites, because of course they see things as being us and them, right? Since you're not a Jerichoite, you must be an Israelite. We don't want the Israelites because they're going to do us harm. Is that the way God sees things? Absolutely not. So what the Jerichoites need to realize is, in fact, this Yahweh, this God that Rahab knows, doesn't want walls, wants people to be together. And so the Lord said to Joshua, now you need to start paying really close attention to what God says and what Joshua, remember the name of the book is Joshua. You need to pay attention to Joshua, but pay attention to what God says. The Lord said to Joshua, look, I've handed Jericho over to you along with its king and soldiers. For what purpose? Well, I can tell you, it's certainly not to kill them, because that wall needs to come down in Joshua's heart. That wall needs to come down so that those people know that, in fact, Yahweh, the God of heaven and earth, sees everyone the same. I've handed them over to you. You shall march around the city, all the warriors circling the city once. And that's what you do for 6 days with 7 priests blowing 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark. Well, of course they're bringing the ark, because it's a holy place that they're at. Taking the ark, and on the 7th day you march around the city 7 times, the priests blowing the trumpets, and when they make a long blast with the ram's horn, as soon as you hear the ram's horn, as soon as you hear the sound of the trumpet, then all the people will shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city is going to fall. There's that wall, and that wall comes down, and suddenly there's no more us and them, there's no more enemies and friends. That wall comes down, and all the people should go straight ahead into that city and be with those people. Sounds like a great plan.
Yeah.
Awesome. So Joshua, the son of Nun, summoned the priests and said to them, take up the Ark of the Covenant and have the 7 priests carry the 7 trumpets of ram's horns to the front of the Ark of the Lord. And to the people he said, go forward and march around the city and have armed men pass on before the Ark of the Lord. Again, I have a memory like a goldfish, but it seems to me, I just read what God said, and I don't see where armed people are a part of any of this.
Yeah, no.
Little trip. Have armed men pass on before the ark of the Lord, as Joshua commanded the people, the 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets, ram's horn. So he still has that religion type of thing going on. But then in verse 9, the armed men went before the priests who blew the trumpets, and then more armed men come after the ark. So now we suddenly start multiplying the armed men. And to the people, Joshua gave this command, don't shout, don't let your voice be heard, don't utter a word until the day I tell you to shout, and then you shout. And so they do that. They go around the city for 6 days once. And then Joshua rose early in the morning on the 7th day, the priests carrying, and the 7 priests carrying the trumpets and blowing the trumpets continually, and the armed men went on before them. Armed men followed the ark. And then on that 7th day, they march around the city. And then Joshua says to the people, shout, because the Lord has given you the city and everything that is in it shall be devoted to the Lord for destruction. That's funny. Again, I don't remember that at all.
No.
You see, I can tell you, again, spoiler alert, I can tell you by the end of this story, there will not be a wall. In fact, God's will be fulfilled. That wall will come down, except in Joshua's heart. In Joshua's heart, that wall does not come down. That wall remains just as strong before, during, and after this whole episode. For Joshua, by the end of this episode, there is still just us and them. And I can tell you that if the world is made out of us and them, they need to go. Isn't that beautiful? I mean, it's scary, right?
But, yeah, but that initial, right, I think in one of our classes, you talked about some of these passages that talked about deliver us from our enemies, right? And you, in the same way that Joshua has this choice of like, there's two ways to get rid of enemies. One is to kill them, right? And the other is to befriend them in such a way that they're no longer enemies.
That's
and
right.
So it's fascinating that, yeah, the
That's
wall
right.
comes down. This was God's will all along, but all of the destruction that happened afterwards.
But what happens, right? Again, the whole Halia Jackson song, right? Joshua fit the battle of Jericho and the wall came tumbling down. The question is, what happens after the wall comes down, right? What happens after that wall comes down? And you know, particularly you people at Central, you know exactly what could and can and should and might happen when that wall comes down. Because sometimes when that wall comes down, beautiful things happen. And sometimes when that wall comes down, not so beautiful things happen. But I can tell you the plan is for the wall to come down, because the plan is for beautiful things to happen. I mean, it goes all the way back there from the very beginning. And again, this is just my own stuff. But right there at the very beginning, in chapter 12 of Genesis, the whole thing starts with God calling Abraham, and the whole plan from the very, right, all of these Israelites are descendants from Abraham. They're carrying forth Abraham's plan, right? The covenant, that special relationship with God. And what is that special relationship supposed to be about? God says to Abraham, I will bless you. I will make your name great so that you can be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you. The one who curses you, I will curse. Just maybe one or two people, right? But because of you, Abraham, all the families of the earth will be blessed. All the families of the earth will be blessed. That's the plan.
Yeah.
All the families of the earth will be blessed. That's the plan from the very beginning. The plan from the very beginning, Genesis to Revelation, the plan from the very beginning is that all the families of the earth are blessed. That's God's plan from the beginning. Anything that does not line up with that is either a test or screwed up theology or fear, which is a big deal, right? Don't be afraid.
Don't be afraid. Be courageous.
Be courageous. Because I can tell you that if you start preaching this, Joshua, if you start preaching this type of message, people aren't going to like it. You know what might happen, actually? If you start preaching this, you might get crucified. Actually, you know, it's happened before. But yeah, but of course, Joshua doesn't change. Yeah, and he doesn't change through the whole book. And again, I could keep going through the whole book of Joshua, even to the very end. He's screwy all the way through.
Yeah.
But he's driven by fear, for me at least. When you say the word, for me at least, when you say the word Joshua to me, or when you said it 5, 7, 10 years ago, you said Joshua to me, the first thing that popped up in my head would have been leader, Moses' successor. Now when you say Joshua, it's a man racked by fear.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah. So Roy, thinking about one of the other things you always said in class is like our task is not to make the scriptures relevant, right? But to show their relevance, right?
They are relevant. That's right.
Use the Band-Aid in the knee, I think.
Exactly right. You don't apply scripture. That's silly, right? You just read it. You just live in it. Again, it's right. This is a little thing. I don't think I used to say this when I was teaching, but it's something that if people read the Bible with as much love, care, and imagination as they read Harry Potter, the world would be a different place.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. The world would be a different place because, when we read the Bible, we think we're looking at some sort of a window, looking at stuff that happened a long time ago, and it's about them and there and then and weird stuff and horrible stuff and misogynistic stuff and racial stuff and violent stuff. Not at all like our world, of course not. I mean, it's the same.
So much,
it's the same world, right?
Same place.
No, it's not. It's just like Harry Potter. It's not meant to be some window into something that's happening on the other side. It's meant to be a mirror to teach us about love and care and friendship and the appearance of evil. And again, not just all nice stuff. It teaches us about the rather unpleasant parts of life as well, just like Harry Potter does. But the problem is that when we read Harry Potter, we get caught up in the story and our imaginations run and we feel emotions and we get caught up in the story. When we read the Bible, start falling apart because it's certainly not about us.
Right.
Well, I think it's always about us.
Well, and I think this year especially, right? I mean, as you're talking about, walls are particularly relevant right now, right? Both physical and sort of things that are happening inside of us as well too, and thinking about the movement for Black Lives, thinking about the election season that we just came through. Even the pandemic and things like medicine have become deeply polarizing in ways, right?
That's right, yeah.
So
I mean, because particularly with the pandemic, right, you have all of these people who are mortal, right? All of these people who are like dying. And then there's all of us who aren't dying, right? No, I mean, the fact of the matter is, for me at least, one of the things that the pandemic has shown us is that we're all, just like A Christmas Carol says, we're all fellow travelers on the way to the grave. And if we could see that, I think it would undercut a lot of our fear. So
powerful.
Yeah.
So coming back to, the walls come down, but Rahab's living in the walls.
That's right.
So maybe just to kind of wrap this sort of up, talking about the character of Rahab living in the walls, she's then sort of brought into the community, but she's still not an insider, right?
That's right, exactly. Well, again, she becomes the symbol, I think, of what God intended for all the Jerichoites, that they get included as well, right? Like the way the story reads now, she's special. She's special because she has heard about God, that she somehow, on some level, accepts God, that she somehow is associated with Israel. But the reason why she's associated with Israel is because she's had some sort of a close contact, shall we say, with Israelites, right? Well, that's what would have happened? What would have happened if, in fact, God's plan, revealed through the captain of the army of the Lord, God's plan had been revealed and lived out through all of those Israelites? All of those Jerichoites would have been Rahab. They would have been included as well. Their houses would have been included in Israel. They would have lived among Israel. And it very well may be that they would have become part of Israel. So
yeah, that's such a powerful thought with that. I wonder too with this, why do you think there's this persistent need in like Rahab was included because she was a convert, right? Because she was cleaned up and dressed up, even though the text still refers to as Rahab the prostitute.
That's right.
Right?
Absolutely.
Why do you think we need to clean all this stuff up all the time for church folk? That's not what the story says. It's Rahab the prostitute, not Rahab the penitent convert, right? Who believes the right 10 points on the website, right?
You know why I think it needs to be cleaned up? Or people think it needs to be cleaned up. You know why? Because they're afraid and they have walls in their heart, and that it's either them or us. In order to be with us, you've got to be like us. You've got to be clean like we are. You can't be, right? Prostitutes are on that side of the wall, right? Israelites are on this side of the wall. In order to be like us, you can't be. And so that wall is still there in our hearts, and that wall needs to come down. Getting Pentecostal here, but
I'm all about it.
No, I think it's such a powerful story, and it's such a powerful story not just because of the beauty of the story, but the absolute tragic, horrific, Holocaust-like nature of what can occur if that wall remains in our hearts. It's a cautionary tale that well, I mean, the 20th century saw it more than any other century, right? About what happens whenever, I mean, what is a ghetto besides a little city with walls, right? So again, the promise is so beautiful, and that's why the story is so tragic. And so, for me at least, so you can tell, it's just infuriating.
And I think that's
why does Rahab get to be the only one?
Yeah.
When it's all the families of the earth are supposed to be blessed.
Mm.
And the only way that blessing occurs is through relationships.
Yeah.
Right? So.
And it's haunting for communities like ours, I think, because how easy it seemed for Joshua to miss that very obvious call of what this was, right? And I wonder, for a place like Central, who's trying to break down walls, but still, we slip into things of conformity, and you have to come be like us, and then whenever you add different pressures of trying to keep an organization afloat financially and all of these things, right? It's just it's an interesting space, but I think the cost of tearing down those walls compared to the cost of what happens when they remain up, or what happens when you have the genocide experience at Jericho through Joshua, right? When you're weighing those things, it doesn't even compare.
Yeah, it just, as you were talking about Central, image popped in my head, right? And it's at the very beginning of the Gospel of John, right? John the Baptist sees Jesus and he says, that's the Lamb of God that's going to take away the sins of the world, right? And a couple of disciples of John see Jesus and they follow him, and he's walking along, and they run up to him and they ask him, "Where are you staying?" And he turns around and says, "Well, first of all, in order to be with me, what you need to do is you need to do this and this and this and this and this, and you need to clean up, and you need to stop being a prostitute, and you need to, and you need to pledge, here's the pledge card, and no." He says, "Come and see."
Come and see.
Come and see. And that's the end of the story. There's nothing else after. I mean, that's the end of the story. That's the end of that little segment, right? Where are you staying? Come and see. And then the story goes off to do something else. For me, at least, that's, if there's anything about Jesus, it's that. It's not about come and be, come and change, come and, no, it's simply come and see. Just come, just be with me, because it's, yet again, it's with that close relationship. That's how that change occurs.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I wonder, so some of my folks right now are really struggling with this idea of unity, right? Because of the imbalance of power and how that affects folks on the margins.
Yeah.
People like Rahab, right?
That's right.
So I wonder, in thinking about this, that the question itself is sort of silly, of are you with them, or are you with us? It's just us. I think that the shallow level of that becomes this like very pretend, we're all singing Kumbaya and hanging out together, and there's, right? But I think the call here is something deeper, where justice is a really important part of this, along with grace.
That's right.
I wonder what you think about that.
Well, again, right, it's for people, how to say it, for people on the margins, for people, right, for Jerichoites, it's clearly dangerous, right? It's a dangerous time, right? And so, yeah, I think that being aware, being wise to the dangers of those walls that are in people's hearts, and being very clear that those walls, even though particularly for people on the margins, of course they're afraid, of course they're not courageous, but being aware that those walls in their own hearts, and I will go ahead and say in my own heart, it needs to come down. That's the dream, right? That's the plan, right? And so even that much, and again, the vision, right? The dream, right? Martin Luther King, again, I know it's trite and it gets overplayed, but Martin Luther King had that vision of no walls, right? That the walls were supposed to come down. And that's the dream that he had. It seems to me that that dream is the dream of the captain of the army of the Lord. It's the dream of God. And those walls, yeah, I mean, they don't just fall magically, right? Yeah, right. It takes a lot of work.
If you were to teach a class on sort of like remodeling 101, like heart interior design kind of thing, right? Where we're tearing down walls, what might be a first step for like folks in community that are looking to do that work?
Oh my gosh.
Just
I don't
small
know.
questions.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not a pastor. Um, um,
It sounds like close encounters. Yeah,
relationships, right?
exactly. Yeah.
I mean, it's just getting to know people, right? Um, I mean, even in the latter half of latter quarter of the 20th century, gay rights, right? And tremendous strides from 1980 even. I mean, in the past 40 years, just the way in which American culture, not completely, but largely, has recognized that these are people that, and how did that come about? Well, it didn't come about by writing letters, and although writing letters is important, it didn't come about by marches, although marches are important. It came about by people coming out around Thanksgiving tables and people saying, I am, it's through those it's through those relationships. And so, yeah, I think.
And the irony here, right, is that like the original, like this, what is he, the commander of the Lord, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Is like the original like queer theologian, right? That's saying like it's binary, and he says, no, this is a stupid question, right? So,
yeah. But why are you even thinking like that, right?
Yeah. That's so beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah.
I love that. Roy, this has been such a gift.
It's been wonderful.
Yeah, thank you for your time. Any final parting thoughts about Rahab or 2020 or any?
No walls. No walls.
No walls.
No walls.
I can get behind that message.
They're too dangerous.
Yes.
Particularly when we don't see them, right?
Those are the most dangerous kind. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not the wall. It's not the rocks and stones in front of Joshua, right? That's not the scary one.
No, it was after that came down, right?
It's in his own heart. Yeah.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
Dude, you're a gift. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh, absolutely. This has been a joy.
Yeah. I know our folks are really going to enjoy checking this out. So
cool. Awesome.
Yeah. So thanks for your time, Roy. And hopefully we need to get you down to Galveston sometime.
Yeah. Get rid of this pandemic and we'll
figure it out after that. But yeah.
That sounds great.
That would be super fun. So thanks again.
Great.
And
of course.
we'll keep in touch.
All right.
Blessings.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.